is Bill Ryan, and I'll be talking about data privacy. I'll be defining it.
My name is Janice Mitchell, and I will be talking about internet privacy legislation.
My name is Fatima Khastkhoda Ardekani, and I'm going to talk about NSA and data brokers.
And my name is Michael Davison, and I'll be summarizing everything and talking about future projections in data privacy.
Okay. So the first thing we have to do when talking about data privacy is define it. What is data privacy? Well, the first thing I decided to do was go to the dictionary and combine the terms data and privacy. There we see, or we come up with a combined definition of the state or condition of having your computed characters, symbols, or quantities that are stored or transmitted in the form of electrical signals or recorded on magnetic, optical, or mechanical recording devices free from observation or being distributed by others, or having made public those electronic signals or stored data which was intended to remain private. That's a pretty comprehensive definition, but when you're talking about data privacy and the minutia of sending and receiving digital transmissions, it leaves a lot open. It leaves a lot open for interpretation. So after that, I went ahead and went to a modern taxonomy or classification system of privacy developed by Daniel Solove. This taxonomy is a new way to think about privacy, and it breaks the categorization of privacy down into 4 categories with 16 subcategories. I'm only going to discuss some of the pertinent subcategories here. The first category is information collection. One of the subcategories is surveillance, and when you're talking about digital technology, you have to talk about surveillance because it's such a prevalent issue dealing with governments and corporations. Surveillance is a negative type of privacy violation where a person or people are watched or monitored by a government or other powerful organizations such as Google, Facebook, Amazon. Surveillance has to create a chilling effect in society where behavior of the surveilled is noticeably changed out of fear or anxiety. The chilling effect is where people feel they might be getting watched, and they change their behaviors. They'll change the websites as they go to just based on the assumption that they think they might be getting watched. And this is a problem. Obviously, interrogation is kind of self-explanatory. This is the acquisition of information through coercion, but not really applicable to the internet. Aggregation is a big one. Aggregation has the potential to be harmful. Aggregation is the pulling together of many different pieces of data into one central location. The issue here is that small harmless pieces of personal information, when considered on its own, can be quite meaningless. So just your birth date, just your address, just your grades, just your friend set or subset of your friends are all harmless. But the same meaningless data, when aggregated, pulled together, can create a comprehensive picture of who you are. Based off of a comprehensive picture, governments or corporations can begin to develop predictive models to try to understand what you might do next, or to just try to understand who you are or the kind of habits that you have. The other subcategories there are identification, insecurity, and secondary use and exclusion. Secondary use is also will be covered later on, so I want to define it here. And secondary use is defined as the use of data for a purpose not related to the one the data subject agreed to share for. So an example of this is you give Facebook or Google your information to search a product or to post a status. They take that information from you and they'll aggregate it with 5 million other people, and then they'll sell it to an advertising agency. The selling of that initial information to that advertising agency would be secondary use of your information. Exclusion. Exclusion is the failure to provide individuals with notice and input about their records. An example of this would be if a website creates a dossier, which is a collection of documents about a particular person, and uses it to rate you for a loan or some other application. In this event, you have no control over the dossier or your rating. Now, an example of something that an example of this of a dossier where you're not excluded would be like your credit report. Your credit report gives you the ability to make changes to it, to view it. A lot of times, these are created behind the curtain of a corporation, and they don't have to show you anything. So if you might develop a negative image that might increase your interest rate on a credit card or might decline you for a loan, and some of the information that went into this dossier may not be correct, and you don't know because you can't see it. So that, again, is a privacy problem. The next category is dissemination of information. Breach of confidentiality. This is very common when you go to the doctor. We all work under, there are laws to prevent the doctor sharing your information, but we all work under the assumption of HIPAA in the United States, where the health professionals cannot divulge the information you give them. Disclosure. Disclosure is similar to a breach of confidentiality, except the confidentiality standard might never have been set. Instead of trust being broken, reputation is damaged. Both are harmful privacy violations. Exposure is similar to disclosure and breach of confidentiality, except that exposure often creates embarrassment and humiliation, grief, suffering, trauma, injury, nudity, sex, urination, defecation, all involve primal aspects of our lives that we've been socialized into concealing. You know, nudity, if I were to go to the rec center naked, I would be kicked out and arrested. 200 years ago, it was commonplace for Romans to go to the gymnasium and exercise in the nude. That doesn't mean because the Romans did it that we should be accepted, you know, that would be an accepted privacy standard here. Privacy is a very kind of culturally relative concept. So, also under this category of dissemination of information, we have blackmail, appropriation, distortion, and increased accessibility. Invasion, intrusion, and decisional interference are the subcategories under invasion. The last thing I want to talk about when we're discussing digital privacy is I think it's important to take this concept off the table from the start. The nothing to hide argument is one that actually Daniel Solov wrote an entire book discussing this topic. His take on it, or actually an example of it is this. Like I said, I have nothing to hide. The majority of American people have nothing to hide. And those that have something to hide should be found out and get what they have coming to them. It's a very negative, it ascribes negative aspects to the concept of privacy. So it assumes privacy, Solov's take on it is that it assumes privacy is a bad thing. He claims that aggregation is completely written off with the nothing to hide argument, because the nothing to hide argument too narrowly focuses the concept of privacy. Solov explains that the most glaring problem with the nothing to hide argument is that it tacitly assumes that privacy is about hiding bad things. He explains that this is a myopic conception of privacy as secrecy instead of privacy as a complex set of ideas. Here Solov falls back on his subgroup of aggregation. Aggregation is a privacy concept that is completely written off, and one utters a phrase of, I have nothing to hide. By saying this, you are too easily allowing disparate groups who possess your personal information to potentially collaborate to form a cohesive picture of you, a privacy-violating portrait. The SOLAW's main issue with the nothing to hide argument is that it focuses too narrowly on the conception of privacy, and it wins by excluding consideration of other problems often raised with the privacy-related problems.
So, invasion of privacy. You say yes, but the law says no. So I'm going to focus on state legislation. According to National Conference for State Legislature, at least 17 states require government websites or state portals to establish privacy policies and procedures, or to incorporate machine-readable privacy policies into their websites. Specifically, Illinois legislation, number 5 of the ILCS 177/5 states that a cookie means a set of computer data on instructions or instructions that are stored in a user's computer via website server for the purpose of gaining information about the user. ILCS 177/10 states that state website agencies may not use permanent cookies or any other invasive tracking programs that monitor and track website viewing habits. However, a state website agency may use transactional cookies that facilitate business transactions. So in other words, they can't use things that are permanent, in terms of your websites that you visited and viewed, cookies or stored information. They can't use that, but they can use things that you've used to purchase. So like if you go to ebay.com or you go to amazon.com or if you go to your favorite store.com, and then you order something off those websites, they can use that information against you or in other cases as they need. ILCS 177/15. The Internet Privacy Task Force is comprised of 17 members total, which include 2 appointees from the Speaker of the House of Representatives, the House Minority Leader, the Senate President, and the Senate Minority Leader, and 9 of those individuals are appointed from the governor. The task force examines technical and procedural changes that are necessary for maintaining the state's computing environmental privacy. The task force will identify threats to privacy from browsers, search engines, web servers, internet service providers, and state agencies that make recommendations as needed. The task force will also make recommendations for the creation or installation of computer programs on state host computers that will disable cookies and other invasive programs. The task force will submit reports to the governor and the General Assembly by December 31st of each year. I'm going to talk a little bit about SOPA, which is a national piece of legislation. SOPA, HR 3261-112, is the Stop Online Piracy Act, which was introduced on October 26, 2011, and sponsored by Lamar Smith, who is a Republican representative from Texas, 21st Congressional District. SOPA authorizes the Attorney General to seek a court order against a U.S. or foreign internet site that is facilitating online piracy or the theft of copywritten materials. So I looked a little bit at some of the other laws pertaining to internet privacy, and I thought it'd be kind of neat to do a comparison of the United States and the United Kingdom. So when I was looking at an article online about the United States and their laws, and then I kind of flipped it and compared it to the United Kingdom and their laws on internet piracy and privacy, I found that the United States investigates instances of online piracy, they issue court orders, and they issue imprisonment and hefty fines, whereas the United Kingdom investigates instances of online piracy, so they're similar in that aspect. However, they do not not take any course of legal action. Rather, they send up to 4 educational letters to individuals who commit such acts, such as piracy. So some people think that this is more of a lighter approach to disciplinary action regarding piracy, internet piracy, but that's the course of action that the government officials in the United Kingdom take versus the ones that the United States takes.
I'm going to talk about NSA and data brokers and see if they are good things or not, or a blessing or a curse. NSA stands for National Security Agency, and its existence could be traced back to in 1917, 3 weeks after just United States declared war in Germany, and the World War One, and in 1937, just several years after the first time, there were some librarians, professional ones, just they realized that their profession just could be used in a kind of organization or something. So they just started to run an association for information science and technology, ASIS&T. They provided administration and communication for its various divisions, and one of the divisions that they used administration and communication was known as a Special Interest Group, or SIG. The current NSA and their mission, first I should say that the National Security Agency is a U.S. intelligence agency. It is responsible for global monitoring, collection, decoding, translation, and analyzing the information that the users just gave them somehow, and analyzing the data for foreign intelligence and counterintelligence purposes. As you can see in the picture, you can see different layers. That the two first is the things that they are already capable of doing. They can understand the person layer, and they can understand the cyber personal layers, and it means the the kind of interactions between the users and how they can use their cell phone and computers. And the last 3 is their mission or their vision in future years. The first one that they are actually working on that is the logical network layer. Is that they can understand how the users are trying to communicate with each other through the network. And the next one is the physical network, and the last one is geographical layer. So they are trying to control everything. The biggest center, it's kind of watching center that they use, is the Utah Center, that is established in just 2013. It's a new one, and it is actually famous for the first intelligence community comprehensive national cybersecurity initiative, or as you can see, ICCNCI. It is designed to support the intelligence community's effort to monitor, strengthen, and protect the nation. And the code named is Bumble Hive. So, as you can see, whenever there are some technologies and changing, there are some people entering the market trying to help and yet make money, somehow help, of course. And so this is the data brokers coming into this market, trying to help different agencies and government and maybe consumer companies or something to use the users' data for them. They just try in different ways, like surveys, internet games or maybe shoppings, even communications. They try to, use the names or save the names, home address, purchase histories or other sensitive information. They just and then try to sell it to NSA or other group of people for different, in incentives. Here is the very informative video. If you were interested, you can watch it. And here is another video. Is that NSA spies on you, which I think we don't have time. And here is shortly is going to explain what is their incentive. The first is data brokers, which is simply money. And the second is NSA, apparently security, but they might use this information in different projects. And here is the Verizon and how it can really use the information. They collect the information when, for example, you have a smartphone and you try to, just surf the internet. Your device sends an HTTP request, and the Verizon injects an HTTP header, and then the destination website receives HTTP request with injected header, and and the website directs the request to the advertising. Advertising has some deals with Verizon, and this is how it works. And the relationship between U.S. government and NSA is like, it's a joke, but it's Mr. Obama talking to a kid, and the kid says, that says you are spying on us online, and he's responding, he's not your dad. So can you expect any online privacy with these all people trying to use your information? Here Michael is going to talk about future and debate.
Okay, so this is fairly grim. This is the future of your privacy, or online privacy as well. So, does anybody recognize this reference? Orwell fans out there? No? Okay. 1984. Okay, so Google is going to continue to provide you services, but at a price. So Google's going to come up with new algorithms that are going to track what you do, what you buy, who you're communicating with, to better service you. They already maintain all of your data, and they have metadata on you for the things you do on a consistent basis. But now they're saying we're going to use that data to better service you, and we'll continue to provide you a great user experience for free. But obviously, it's not free. It comes at the expense of your personal information. So eventually, what create something like the Android that really is your slave or your servant, and is going to predict what you need, when you need it, and just be your personal assistant of sorts. Google very recently in Europe, they rejected 58% of people's requests to remain forgotten on the internet. So let's say that there's some defamatory content on the internet about you. Google now becomes the arbiter of that content, at least in Europe, and they decide whether or not that information will be pulled from their server side, like as far as Google servers accessing that information. So that actually totaled to 84,073 requests that were rejected by Google. These could be things from like somebody was raped, and there's information about that rape out there, and they want that pulled. Google gets to decide whether or not that is pulled or not. Or it could be like, the guy is maybe he's a child molester, and he wants to have that information pulled, and then Google would be right in not pulling it. And there are apps that monitor your thoughts, and you don't even know it right now. There's an app by Samaritan called Radar, and what that does is, let's say I have it. It'll look at all my friends, so maybe it looks at Bill and Janice and Fatima, and it follows their feeds and like looks for keywords as to what they're saying, and it tells me, well, Bill's really depressed today. He might be suicidal or something. You should go check on him. So like you can kind of see that on the surface that sounds like a good idea, but what's really going on is they're invading their privacy, and they don't even know because they're my friends, and they're connected to me, and that's how this whole thing works. Is you probably don't think that you're putting anything out there, but you're connected to somebody who's connected to somebody, and that information is being disseminated or funneled back into these data brokers or to whoever these developers are for these apps. So how can you maintain your privacy? Well, you can remain anonymous. One way to remain anonymous is with the Onion router, the Tor browser. And I am in no way a proponent of this. This is just something that you could use. And what this does is it encrypts your browsing experience. And the reason it's called the Onion router is because it uses many layers of encryption, much like an onion. Right now it uses 3 layers of encryption. And then it'll pass through different routers until it comes out the inside, like the very last machine in the daisy chain. And it obviously won't be your IP. It'll be that machine's IP. So it looks like this. You start with yourself. And then this is the Tor network. It goes through Tor nodes. Then it comes out the other end as whatever this computer's IP is. And believe it or not, this system was created by the US Navy. And they made it, and they're like, this is a great tool. How can we actually use this to combat terrorism or to help with people that are rebelling against their government or repressive regime or something like that? They had to make this public to get more users involved in the network, because if it was just the Navy using it, that's not enough machines. So they made it public. They released it to everybody so they could hide and allow people that are trying to stand up against their oppressive regime to use this network effectively. So it wasn't created for the purpose of illegal activity. However, it gets a bad rep nowadays. Like if you talk about Tor, people are going to think you're using it for nefarious reasons, like something like the Silk Road or KP or something like that. So it was created again by US intelligence agencies. There are speculated to be over 3 million Tor users right now. So to wrap things up, how important is privacy to you? Not just online, but your privacy in general. And what are you willing to do to protect it? What lengths will you go to? Will you use encrypted browsing? And these are my thoughts about the future of online privacy. Like Kanye, I don't see one. I don't think there's a future.
That's very good. Okay, let's give them a hand. Quick question regarding the Tor thing. If something is has a thread going from point A, B, C, D, E, where is it really lost? Because you can track it back.
You can, and when you read our paper, you'll see that we kind of touch on that a little bit more. Like they can decrypt encrypted data, and recently in Great Britain, they shut down this huge network of people that were using the Tor network to disseminate like drugs and stuff like that. They were able to decrypt all the data. It's just really, really hard to do that. But it is possible to go back and trace it to the original place. But as developers see that, hey, they can decrypt, they'll just add more layers of encryption, making the encryption process more and more difficult.
Any other questions, comments?
Go home.
Very good. Let's give him another hand. Yes, please.
It's like the data is transferred. Like when you are trying to send a data using Tor network, no one else can know the data except the sender and the receiver. The complete data, if anyone tries to encrypt the data, but the output, it may be shown differently. Like if I send you a message like, "Hello, Dr. Wafik Wabi," the message output, if anyone tries to interrupt in the middle and tries to catch the data, but it won't be visible the same, because I did my undergraduation major project on Tor network, so I have an idea about that.
Did you find a lot of the same issues that it's mainly used for criminal activity?
Yeah, most of the people can use for criminal activities, but the US government started it for the naval communication, but it is still developing and in future we may get people may not try
And there are a lot that don't use it.
yeah, but they are trying to do if anyone tries to decrypt the data, they are trying to avoid it, but it's a future. We have still more to develop in that.
It's nearly impossible.
Yeah, impossible. Yeah, if anyone tries to. Yeah, if anyone tries to decrypt it, but they will get a wrong message regarding the date.
People that could theoretically decrypt are probably governments or Google or
Yeah, yeah,
not,
that's
probably really just like China, powerful government, China and the United States.
yeah.
The article about decrypting the encrypted data, all that I thought was like this was somebody on the inside that probably leaked information, and they're just saying that to like scare people to think that the Tor network isn't as secure as what people previously thought it was.
Yeah, it's like if I try to send a message from like from US to India or any other country, the data is like it uses IP address of several countries like England, Africa. So it travels through different IPs, but the sender is always hidden, and the receiver also doesn't like he won't know who is the sender, but he may as I said, I will send a message from US to India. The Indian receiver who is there, he may receive if he tries to catch up with the IP address, it may be from China or any other country. So it's totally hidden.
Very good. Quick question for you. When they say that Brazil is having some attempts to take the control of the internet from America, does this mean that America will lose its dominance, or?
I think you might be able to answer this better than me. I don't know. I think what it means is that as of right now, an overwhelming majority of internet traffic comes through U.S. backbones, or U.S. company servers. And with the NSA revelations, countries, especially Brazil, because it was found out that the NSA was doing economic espionage against Petrobras, which is, I think, one of their bigger oil companies that supports their economy. So they wanted to reroute the way their internet traffic goes, and they wanted to control where their internet traffic goes to from Brazil, to prevent it from being intercepted through U.S. servers. Is that?
Thank you very much.